My life seemed perfect on the surface. I had a stable marriage, a reliable partner, and a routine that provided comfort, if not excitement. By all accounts, I had everything I needed. A home filled with laughter, security, and the quiet kind of love that doesn't demand attention. And yet, deep down, I felt a void, a silent, persistent ache I couldn't ignore. My husband, Mark, was the kind of man anyone would describe as dependable. He worked hard, always ensuring our life together was free of turbulence. But over the years, our relationship had shifted, evolving into something that felt transactional. We communicated in lists, bills to be paid, appointments to keep, groceries to buy. The conversations that once lasted hours, weaving through dreams and memories, had dwindled to exchanges of necessity. Intimacy between us became routine, a scheduled act rather than an expression of passion. I told myself it was normal, that every marriage eventually finds its rhythm, trading the fireworks of early love for the steady hum of companionship. But there were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the spark we once had simply burned out, or if it had been extinguished by neglect. I tried to push the feelings aside, to remind myself that love wasn't always about grand gestures or endless passion. People grow, priorities shift, and relationships evolve. But the truth gnawed at me. I missed being seen. I missed the way Mark used to look at me, as though I were the most fascinating person in the room. Now I felt invisible. It was in this fragile state that I met Julius. He joined my team at work, a newcomer with a vibrant energy that was impossible to ignore. Julius had a way of making people feel important, like every word they spoke held value. His smile was warm, his laughter infectious, and his confidence effortless. Unlike the colleagues I'd known for years, he didn't stick to polite small talk. He asked meaningful questions about books I loved, places I wanted to visit, and moments that shaped me. At first, I didn't think much of it. Julius was kind, attentive, but no more than that. I didn't believe someone like him could impact my life in any meaningful way. Yet, with every conversation, I found myself drawn to him. He had a way of making me feel alive, reminding me of the person I used to be before life became a blur of responsibilities and compromises. Our exchanges started innocently enough. A quick chat by the coffee machine, a passing comment during meetings. "How's your day going?" he'd ask, his tone so genuine that I couldn't help but answer honestly. I began sharing stories I hadn't thought about in years, laughing in a way that felt foreign and exhilarating. He listened in a way that felt rare, focused, present, as though every word I spoke mattered. I realized I looked forward to these moments more than I wanted to admit. I started lingering near his desk, inventing reasons to ask for his input or share a thought. My heart raced when he smiled, his eyes lighting up with recognition. I told myself it was harmless. After all, everyone enjoys a little attention now and then. A small spark of admiration didn't mean I was crossing any lines. But there was a part of me, buried beneath layers of rationalization, that knew better. I began to notice changes in myself. I spent more time choosing my outfits, wondering if he'd noticed the new blouse or the way my hair fell over my shoulders. I caught myself smiling at my reflection, something I hadn't done in years. But with every thrill came a pang of guilt. This wasn't who I was. I loved my husband, I truly did. Mark was a good man, a loyal partner who had built a life with me through shared struggles and triumphs. The idea of betraying him, even in thought, filled me with shame. Still, I couldn't deny the way Julius made me feel. Seen, appreciated, alive. It wasn't just about him. He represented something I'd been craving for years. A connection, a spark, a reminder of the passion I'd let slip away. I started to rationalize my feelings, convincing myself they were nothing more than a reaction to the monotony of my life. Julius wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just being kind, wasn't he? I was probably reading too much into his gestures, projecting my own loneliness onto him. But no matter how hard I tried to suppress it, the truth became impossible to ignore. The boundaries I'd carefully built around my heart were beginning to blur, and I was no longer certain where admiration ended and something more dangerous began. Looking back, I wonder if I could have stopped it then, if I could have walked away before it all unraveled. But in that moment, standing at the edge of a line I didn't yet know I would cross, I convinced myself it was nothing. Just a harmless connection in a life that had grown too quiet. I didn't know it then, but Julius wasn't just a fleeting distraction. He was the catalyst for a storm that would change everything. It wasn't long before my connection with Julius began to seep into my thoughts outside of work. What started as casual interactions had become the highlight of my day. I looked forward to seeing him, anticipating his jokes, his kind words, the way he seemed to notice me in a way no one else did. I told myself it was innocent, but the truth was, I was beginning to crave his attention. One day, after a particularly stressful meeting, Julius suggested we grab coffee. It felt harmless, colleagues stepping away for a quick break. I agreed, trying to ignore the excitement bubbling beneath my calm demeanor. We found a small cafe nearby, its warm ambience offering a welcome contrast to the cold, impersonal office. Sitting across from him, I felt something shift. The conversation started light, but soon drifted into more personal territory. He talked about his family, his dreams, and the challenges he'd faced moving to a new city. He listened intently when I spoke, asking thoughtful questions that pulled me deeper into the moment. For the first time in years, I felt truly heard. Julius didn't just listen to my words. He understood them. His laugh came easily, his compliments genuine, and I felt a warmth I hadn't realized I'd been missing. When he walked me back to the office, he placed his hand lightly on my back as we crossed the street. It was a fleeting touch, barely noticeable, yet it sent a spark through me. I told myself it was nothing, just a friendly gesture, but it lingered in my mind long after I returned to my desk. That night, lying in bed beside Mark, I couldn't stop thinking about Julius. Guilt churned in my stomach, but it wasn't enough to drown out the thrill I felt when I replayed our conversation. I turned to face my husband, watching him sleep. He looked peaceful, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I hated myself for letting my thoughts wander, for letting Julius take up space in my mind that should belong to Mark. Yet, the line between friendship and something more had begun to blur, and I wasn't sure if I could, or even wanted to, pull back. The days following our coffee outing were a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't seem to control. My interactions with Julius became more frequent, and with each one, the connection between us deepened. It wasn't just his charm or the way he listened. It was the way he made me feel seen, valued, and alive. At home, the distance between Mark and me grew more pronounced. He noticed my distracted demeanor, the way I'd zone out during dinner or offer curt, one-word answers to his questions. "Are you okay?" he asked one evening, his tone laced with concern. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. The guilt was suffocating. I wanted to believe I could keep my feelings for Julius contained, that I could enjoy his attention without crossing any lines. But the reality was, I had already crossed them in my heart. I avoided examining what that meant too closely, afraid of where it would lead me. Julius, however, wasn't content to keep things as they were. One afternoon, he asked if I wanted to grab lunch. His tone casual but his eyes searching. I hesitated, knowing that spending time alone with him was dangerous. Yet I found myself agreeing, unable to resist the pull. Over lunch, the conversation turned more personal than ever before. "You seem unhappy," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Are you?" The question caught me off guard. I stared at him, unsure of how to respond. Was I unhappy? The truth was complicated, tangled up in years of unspoken frustrations and unmet needs. I nodded slowly, unable to lie. His expression softened, and for a moment, the air between us felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. "You deserve to be happy," he said, his voice low. "You deserve to feel loved." The words hit me harder than they should have. Tears stung my eyes, and I quickly looked away, afraid of what he might see in my face. That night, the weight of it all became unbearable. Lying awake beside Mark, I realized I was standing at the edge of a precipice. One more step and there would be no turning back. The question was, did I have the strength to stop, or had I already fallen too far? The breaking point came quicker than I anticipated. One evening, as I sat at home scrolling through my phone, a message from Julius appeared. "Thinking of you. I hope you're okay." It was a simple text, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. I stared at the screen, torn between the excitement his words stirred in me and the crushing guilt I felt for hiding this part of my life from Mark. It wasn't the first message Julius had sent, but this one felt different. More personal, more direct. Mark walked into the room then, pausing when he saw me clutching my phone a little too tightly. "Everything all right?" he asked casually, but his eyes lingered on me, searching. "Yeah," I said quickly, locking the screen and forcing a smile. "Just work stuff." He nodded, but his expression darkened as he turned away. I could feel the weight of his suspicion hanging in the air, and for the first time, I realized how far I'd let things spiral out of control. The next day at work, Julius cornered me in the hallway. "I feel like we need to talk," he said, his voice quiet but insistent. I followed him to an empty conference room, my heart pounding. He closed the door behind us, his face serious. "I don't want to make things harder for you," he began, "but I can't pretend I don't feel something for you. I think you feel it too." His words hung in the air, and I felt my carefully constructed walls crumble. I couldn't deny it anymore. I did feel something for Julius, something I hadn't felt in years. But admitting it felt like crossing an invisible line I could never uncross. "I don't know what to do," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. Julius reached for my hand, his touch warm and steady. "You have to decide what makes you happy," he said. "You deserve that." That night, I sat alone in the living room, staring into the dark. Julius's words echoed in my mind, but so did the memory of Mark's quiet devotion. I was standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path I chose, someone would get hurt. The choice was mine, but it didn't feel like freedom. Felt like loss.